The heavy air inside the auction hall seemed to still as a tiny figure stepped through the doorway. Emily Parker, barely 8 years old, clutched her father's silver police badge so tightly it left marks on her palm. The metal looked enormous against her small hand, a relic of a world she refused to let slip away. Conversations faded into uneasy silence as she walked forward, her jaw set with a determination far beyond her years. No parent followed. No one guided her steps. It was just a little girl with tear-streaked cheeks and a promise to keep. Rows of kennels lined the barn, their metal bars glinting faintly under the dim lights. The smell of sawdust and old hay lingered in the air as Emily moved slowly down the aisle, her small shoes crunching softly against the floor. Each cage held a pair of pleading or wary eyes, but she didn't stop. Her gaze was searching for something, someone she would know by heart. The auctioneer paused mid-sentence, his voice catching as he watched the determined child weave through the rows. Clutched in her pocket was an envelope stuffed with birthday bills and coins collected with trembling hands. She swallowed hard as she reached the last kennel and froze. Curled in the corner was a battered German shepherd, his scarred body still, his eyes clouded with sorrow. Emily's breath hitched. She didn't need to read the faded sign above his cage to know. She had found Shadow. Emily knelt in front of the cage, her small fingers trembling as they wrapped around the cold metal bars. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't need to see clearly to know it was him. "Shadow," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's me, Emily." At first, the German shepherd didn't move his head, still resting heavily on his paws. Then, with a slow, aching effort, he lifted his head. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world disappeared. In that single look, memories flooded back, warm evenings on the porch, her father's laughter, the gentle weight of Shadow's head resting on her lap when she was small. Recognition sparked in his tired eyes, fragile but undeniable. Emily pressed her palm against the bars, her tears slipping freely now. "I found you," she whispered, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. Shadow let out a low, trembling whine. He remembered. The auctioneer's voice broke the heavy silence. "Lot 72, retired canine, 8 years old," he announced, his tone uncertain as his eyes shifted to the little girl kneeling before the cage. No hands rose to bid. Most turned away. An injured, aging police dog wasn't worth much to them. But to Emily, he was everything. Her voice, fragile but filled with courage, rose above the quiet. "He was my dad's partner," she said, clutching the silver badge to her chest. When he died, they took him away. I came to bring him home." A ripple went through the crowd. Conversations died. Even the auctioneer lowered his gaze, his throat tightening. Shadow, as if hearing her plea, pushed himself shakily to his feet. His nose touched her small hand, through the bars, a silent vow, stronger than words. In that moment, no one saw an old broken dog. They saw loyalty waiting to live again. Emily's trembling hands dug into her pocket, pulling out the worn envelope she had carried like a lifeline. Inside were crumpled bills pennies wrapped in tissue, and the last $20 bill she had hidden in her sock drawer. She had counted it over and over, praying it would be enough. "This is all I have," she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of hope and fear. "Please, I promised my dad I'd take care of him." The auctioneer stared at the pile of coins and bills, 83.12. His heart ached, but the rules felt like chains. "I'm sorry, miss. The minimum is 100. Emily clutched the envelope against her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. Shadow let out a low, aching whine that cut through the silence like a blade. From the back of the barn, a deep voice broke the stillness. "I'll cover the rest." A tall man stepped forward, his weathered hands removing his hat. "Let her have her dog." Gasps swept the room as the auctioneer's voice cracked. "Sold." Emily blinked, hardly daring to believe it. The man gave her a gentle smile. "Go on, sweetheart. Bring him home." And in that instant, the barn held its breath, waiting for the miracle to unfold. The auctioneer's hand trembled slightly as he slid the key into the rusty lock. With a soft, metallic click, the kennel door creaked open, and the entire barn seemed to hold its breath. Shadow didn't move at first. He stood frozen, his paws buried in the straw, staring at Emily as if he feared she might vanish like a dream. "It's okay," she whispered, her small voice trembling but steady. "You can come out now." Slowly, with a shudder that rippled through his scarred shoulders, Shadow took a single step forward, then another. His nose brushed her palm whiskers, tickling her skin, and suddenly he pressed his massive head against her chest so hard it nearly knocked her over. Emily dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around his thick neck as sobs tore free. His low, trembling sigh seemed to carry years of pain and longing melting away in that single moment. Around them, the barn faded into silence. Even the auctioneer wiped at his eyes. In that embrace, it wasn't just a girl and her dog. It was a promise kept, a family reunited against all odds. Emily's small fingers clutched the silver badge as she stepped into the late afternoon sunlight, Shadow leaning heavily against her side with every careful step. The gravel crunched softly under their feet, and for the first time in a year, Emily felt the weight in her chest lift. She paused at the edge of the lot, tilting her face toward the sky streaked with gold. "I brought him home, Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking into the warm air. Shadow turned his head, nudging her cheek with his scarred muzzle, as if he understood every word. His tail gave a slow, unsteady wag, not of excitement, but of relief. The tall man who had stepped in to save them lingered at the barn's doorway, his hat held against his chest. He raised his hand in a silent farewell, and Emily managed a shaky wave. In return, her heart swelling with gratitude she couldn't put into words. Together, girl and dog stepped onto the dusty road leading away from the auction yard. It didn't matter where it ended. All that mattered was that they were walking it together. For the first time in so long, Shadow's steps were steady, his tail wagging with something they both finally shared, again hope. As they reached the quiet stretch of road beyond the barn, the world felt still, almost reverent. Emily's small hand rested on Shadow's back, her fingers sinking into his thick fur as if anchoring herself to a piece of her father. The badge glinted softly in the fading sunlight, catching tiny sparks of gold with every step. Shadow walked close, his body leaning gently into hers, each movement careful, as though he too was afraid this moment might vanish if he rushed. Emily glanced down at him, her tears drying into a fragile smile. "We did it," she whispered, her voice trembling, but sure. Behind them, the tall man watched quietly, a protective warmth in his eyes. He knew this reunion wasn't just about a girl and a dog. It was about a promise fulfilled and a bond death couldn't break. As the horizon opened before them, Emily squeezed Shadow's fur and took a deep breath, ready to face a future where love had won. Outside, the late afternoon sun bathed the gravel lot in a warm golden glow, turning the moment into something almost sacred. Emily paused at the edge of the road, clutching her father's badge in one hand, while the other rested on Shadow's scarred back. He leaned into her side, his steps slow and deliberate, as if every movement acknowledged the weight of the journey they had both endured. She tilted her face toward the sky, her voice soft but steady. "I brought him home, Dad," she whispered, and in that instant it felt as though the world itself was listening. Shadow lifted his head and gently nuzzled her cheek, a silent answer that needed no words. Behind them, the tall man raised his hand in quiet farewell, a knowing smile on his face. Emily waved back, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. Together, girl and dog stepped forward, their shadows merging on the dusty road toward a new beginning. As they walked away from the auction hall, the world seemed to grow quieter, as if honoring the bond between the little girl and the loyal dog by her side. Emily held her father's badge close to her chest, its cool metal warming in her palm, while Shadow's steady presence pressed against her leg with every careful step. The barn doors creaked shut behind them, but the memory of that moment lingered like an echo, one of love reclaimed and promises kept. The tall man who had helped them stood at the doorway, his hat in hand, watching the pair disappear down the dusty road. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily smiled through her tears. The ache of loss was still there, but now it was wrapped in hope. Shadow's tail gave a gentle wag, not out of fear or uncertainty, but because he knew deep in his loyal heart that he was finally home again. One of the most profound lessons from this story is the power of loyalty and promises kept even when life feels broken. Emily's determination to find Shadow teaches us that love doesn't end with loss. It can carry us through grief and lead to healing. For older audiences who have lived through seasons of joy and sorrow, this reminds us that the bonds we create, whether with family, friends, or even animals, leave an imprint that time cannot erase. Another key message is that sometimes what truly matters isn't wealth or status, but keeping your word and honoring relationships. Emily had nothing but $83.12 and her father's badge, yet her sincerity moved hearts and changed everything. It's a powerful reminder that compassion and integrity can open doors no amount of money can. Lastly, Shadow's unwavering memory and response show how love creates unspoken connections that survive separation and hardship. For seniors reflecting on life, it's comforting to know that the kindness and love they've shared continue to live on in the hearts of others. True bonds are never lost. They simply wait to be found again, reminding us that love is the legacy we all leave behind.